coming closer together.
Coming closer together, okay. I thought you were going to start doing a dance routine.
No, we've got a bit Brittany.
Hello, MFA EX. We are here to talk to you about closing the gender AI gap. Now, I'm sure if you've used AI, you would have experienced bias in some way, and we've seen some examples of stereotypes today. So why are we focusing on gender specifically? Well, 64% of the media industry identifies as a woman. Woo! So we are a very female-heavy industry, but the tools that are being developed for the future of our industry are being developed by men, and they're being developed for men. So it's time to change that. And our rallying cry to you, the industry changers, is to help us close the gender AI gap. So who are we, and why are we talking to you about this today?
Afternoon, I'm David Bielenberg. I'm the Head of Strategy at PhD. I firmly believe that inclusive technology benefits everyone, and so what that means is that everyone needs to be a part of the conversation and a part of the solution.
And I'm Louise Cummins. I'm the Australian founder of the Australian Centre for AI and Marketing, and I believe with AI, you guys have heard so much about AI, you're probably over it, but with great power comes great responsibility. Yes, I'm quoting Spider-Man. But I believe that with good also comes guardrails, and this is a really important topic, so I'm really excited to be sharing our insights today.
And I'm Jebba, I head up digital at PhD, and I'm talking about this because it perfectly intersects two of my biggest passions, which is ethics in data and technology and girl power.
Woo! So the first thing to say on this topic is that if you have a brain, you have a bias. No one is purposely building gender bias into AI tools, but it's being built or into these tools because of two unconscious biases. The first one, unconscious bias, is where we make decisions and we take actions based on the limited experiences of our personal pasts. And the second, and this is really pertinent when it comes to the data that AI is being trained on, is called sampling bias. First time I've forgotten one, it's my favourite topic. This is where
There's 1,000 people here, that's a lot too.
Sampling bias is where we make decisions and take actions based on limited or incomplete sets of data that isn't representative of the big picture. And these biases have impacted technologies throughout history. For example, did you know that women are 73% more likely to be killed or seriously injured in a vehicle crash? And this is because the technologies such as seatbelts and crash test dummies that give cars their safety ratings up until recently have only been based on the male anatomy. Additionally, fitness trackers and smartwatches are much more precise and much more accurate at measuring the physical activity of men. And smartphones tend to be designed based on the average size of the male hand, meaning that women are more likely to experience pain and injury when using these devices. And we're at a point in our history now where these mistakes of the past are being coded into the technology of the future. A recent study of AI models found that of 133 of them, 44% of them included some sort of gender bias against women, and that by the year 2030, up to 85% of AI systems will be giving incorrect results because of these biases.
And we've all experienced this, right? So you put in a prompt, for example, give me an image of a judge, and you will get an older white male. If you do a prompt saying, give me an image of a parent, unfortunately will predispose to being only a mother. Okay, I'm nervous about this. We're doing a magic trick. Which didn't work at one time, so this is good.
Yeah, no, this is risky, but no pain, no gain. Okay, I'm going to ask everyone, if you have ChatGPT or some sort of AI tool on your phone, if you could please take it out now and give it the following prompt. Pick a card. This did work very well in Melbourne, but you know, it might not come off here, and that is showbiz. So, once you've done that and asked it to pick a card, if you could please just put your hand up so that we can see who's participating and who's done it. There's no prizes, I'm afraid. Okay, that's a representative sample. Keep your hands up, please. Now, keep your hands up if you got one of the following cards.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. What do you think? About 30, 40%?
No, higher.
Higher?
Higher than, yeah.
Okay. So, statistically, you can take your hands down now. Thank you. That was a success. I think we call that a success.
It worked.
Statistically speaking, there are 52 cards in a deck. I've given you 2 cards that it could
We've
have
lost
potentially
control
been.
of the audience.
Yeah. There should be 4% of you should still have your hands up. About 30% of you still have your hands up. So what that means is that the model is favouring the cards that appear most frequently in the data that it's being trained on. And in this case, that's the Ace of Spades and the Queen of Hearts. If you are a 3 of clubs or a 4 of diamonds, you might feel a bit left out and like these models aren't being inclusive to you and your needs.
So why does it have a gender bias? There's a lot of different reasons, but a big piece of it is the fact that 71% of the developers in this space are male. There's a number of reasons for that, including girls not adopting STEM subjects as well as much, but that lack of diversity and inclusion in this development actually then continues this bias throughout the execution.
And we see that in the products that are being developed. So when you look at speech recognition systems, so not just Amazon, but Google and Microsoft and Apple were included in a Stanford study that shows that speech recognition systems make errors almost twice as much when interpreting female voices as male voices. And I heard a really nice anecdote at South by Southwest as to why this was. One of the original development teams from the Alexa team spoke at South by Southwest and said that when they were training Alexa, they wanted to have a really diverse data set of voices to train the model. So they sent an all-staff email to Amazon US and asked people to stay behind after work and help volunteer to train Alexa. What they didn't account for was that a lot of caregiving duties traditionally sit with women, so they had a much smaller representative sample size of women volunteer to do that and able to stay behind after work. And as a result, when Alexa was first launched, it really struggled to understand the patterns in female voices, our tonalities, etc. And this is a really nice example, I think, of what happens when females' voices and inputs are missing from data and technology development. It means that the products and services that are developed are in better service of men than they are of women.
So we've spoken for 7.5 minutes now about the impacts of gender bias in AI on society and culture, but this is a media conference. So how does it influence us today and in this room? Well, the first area where it's impacting our industry is in the hiring processes. So going back to that point around pattern recognition and data availability, if there are certain roles in the media landscape that have historically been skewed towards or occupied by men, AI-powered recruitment processes, so the vetting of CVs and the shortlisting of candidates, will inherently, because of that historic bias, favour the CVs of men in that process.
And then when we're thinking about media and creative generation, AI has been touted as a cost and time-saving mechanism for creative development, particularly in a lot of publisher and digital platforms that we work with. But the challenge is that when bias is really deep-rooted in AI, we see that stereotypes are perpetuated. And the example here in gender is that a lot of studies have shown that male imagery is usually typically associated with luxury products, such as cars and watches, and we see female imagery more commonly showing up in domestic products, like laundry powder. I know.
And the final one that's really pertinent to a lot of us is around targeting. So if we are using AI to identify target segments for our clients' products, without the right controls and mitigation, there is a risk that we will be identifying target segments based on incorrect or outdated assumptions about who the most valuable growth audiences are for these products.
So what can you do? So one of the big things that we're seeing is that women are actually training themselves on AI less than 25% as their male counterparts. So you guys are changers. This is your opportunity to actually address that. So how do we actually lean into training and making sure that you're upskilling in this area? So key things. Get on the tools. Yes, there's some great training programs, but nothing compares to getting on the tools. You know, when I built my first agent, and don't get me wrong, I actually used step-by-step ChatGPT giving me the step-by-step guides, but it was just fantastic to actually go, I built this myself. And I think that when you're on the tools, it's so much more impactful than actually any training. So yes, do training, but make sure you get on the tools. And now there's a proliferation of AI tools out there, so just get on the tools. The other is practice conscious inclusion. So once you know your bias, and we've heard a lot today, right? So you've heard about the bias in the output, the bias in the fact that it's been programmed, the bias in hiring. There's so many different biases. So just make sure that once you actually know this consciousness of bias, make sure that you're adapting to make sure that you're asking the right questions around it. So participate in the conversation. Often I hear with AI, there's a bit of people that are either, so excited, or the ones that actually think that, Terminator's coming after us, right? So make sure you listen to all voices. And I loved the inclusion conversation. I'm a big advocate of neurodiversity inclusion. And I think it's so important that we're listening to every voice in the room. So, you need optimists and pessimists, right, in every team. The optimists build the plane and the pessimists build the parachute. So it's really important that we have a diversity of thinking. So ask the big questions. When people are coming in and trying to sell you tech, make sure you're asking these questions. Is there bias? How do we overcome that bias? So it's up to all of us in this room, the changes, to actually, I think, this room can really help with actually changing this whole pattern within the Australian market.
And how can we practice conscious inclusion? Well, there's a few examples there. I know probably not everyone can read them, but you can actually ask AI to do that for you. So we should know by now that the outputs of large language models are only as good as the inputs. So make your inputs really good. Ask whichever large language model you're preferencing to eliminate bias from its answer. Ask it to have really balanced diversity in its answer. And that's going to be particularly important if you're using AI for insights and strategy generation. And then finally, we of course have a QR code. We have curated a bunch of courses here that are very inclusive AI programs. We have spoken about gender specifically today, but these programs are inclusive of all. Hopefully, everyone's taking away from today that any form of bias in AI is going to be harmful to our society. So we have created a very equitable and inclusive AI program curator here. And Louise has offered everyone in this room a 15% discount on the course through her AI Marketing Institute, so reach out to any of us on LinkedIn if you'd like to be able to access that.
So we wanted to finish today's presentation with a quote from an author called Tracy Spicer, who wrote a book called Man-Made on the topic of gender bias in AI. She finishes her book by saying, "I invite you to join a movement with its sights set on a fairer future."
A future for all of us, a future made for humans.
Collectively, we have the power to determine our destiny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We run